Okay, so let's start. So welcome to this session in the afternoon. Let's start with some presentation. So my name is Frédéric Descamps. As you can hear, I'm speaking the most spread language in the world, which is the bad English. So if there is something you don't get, just ask me, but after the session. So I am using MySQL since a lot of time. So I started with version 3.20. I'm a DevOps believer. I am a cloud native, meaning raised and born in Belgium under the cloud. And I have a website where you can find a lot of information about databases and, of course, MySQL. If you're a developer or a DBA, you will find a lot information there. Like I said, if you want more details, you can find me at the booth number 6. You should not miss the booth. It's a big Oracle one. So let's start with the tip number 1. First, please don't use MyISAM. I don't know if you are still using MyISAM. If you don't know what it is, perfect. Don't even Google it. But if you know, please forget about it. This is a very old engine that you should not use because you can lose your data. With MySQL 8, we really want to be completely ACID compliant and not lose data. So by default, we are using InnoDB. And as you can see, even for performance, it's much better. So first tip was don't use MyISAM. Number 2, usually when you're a developer, you want to create data and then play with the data. So exporting data in parallel also can make it stuff much faster. And developers usually they use logical dumps, logical backups, not the one that you use in production, which is physical backups. So to do that, I think if you are familiar with MySQL, you are using MySQL dump. Forget about it also, and now use MySQL shell dump and load utility. Will make it much faster. You can use parallel threads, and so this is very good. And you can store the data in also OCI object storage if you are using OCI, but S3 blob storage, not only on your disk. So this is how it works. So it's very easy. You can dump an instance, dump a schema, dump a table like this, and you give the threads. Also, the import is also in parallel, which only load to dump. Load dump can't load any dumps you did with instance, schema, and table. So MySQL shell, and as you can see here, it's in JavaScript. You can do it in JavaScript, in Python, has multiple languages available in the new MySQL shell. So MySQL shell is the client for MySQL that we have since MySQL 8.0. So as you can see, you can also import data much faster than what it is usually, because with MySQL 8, you have the ability to reduce the durability while you load the data. Certainly when you do an initial load, if this process fails, if the machine crashes, it's not very important at that time because you can restart the machine and restart the import because this is not happening often. So what you can do is to disable the redo logs and you put these settings. So you reduce the durability. And what happened, you can see, for example, this is an example on a small machine. You were able to load 65 gigabytes in less than 5 minutes. So usually if you are using MySQL, these numbers, you don't reach them with the full durability. Tip number 3, bypass intermediate storage. If you want to copy from your machine to another machine, it's also very easy and make it fast in parallel. It's using the very new, this is copy instance. I think it has, we went out with 0.35, so we are in 0.36 now, or in 8.3 also, because we have 2 branches, and it's a copy instance. So this is how you can copy data from one machine to another machine. Could be another test machine, could be a production machine, whatever you want. This is how you can do it. And you can also say, oh, I had some MyISAM. I heard Fred, he says no MyISAM. You can say, oh, all the copy will be forced to be InnoDB, for example. So all that you can do it. So this was tip number 3. Number 4, always use primary key. So I will have Thursday a session completely just related to that. But what you need to know is that primary keys are very problematic for performance in MySQL. And it's also very bad when you are using replication, because you will do a full table scan every time on the replicas. So since MySQL 8, you have the choice to set SQL generate invisible primary key, so very long variable name, to enable what we call the GIPK mode, meaning that if your developers, they don't create primary keys, MySQL will generate one for you. You won't see it, it will be hidden, but you have access to it if you really want to. And it is being used for replication, for everything, to store the data, for the secondary index. So very good for performance. Without that, you may have this contention on some mutexes that will slow down everything. Tip number 5, and we are on time. Check your indexes. So it's very important to not maintain indexes if you are not using them. Every time you have indexes that are on your database and you don't use them, the MySQL will maintain these, and this has a cost. Everything has a cost. So this cost can slow down everything. So it slows down the write. So when you write data, you need to maintain the index. But it also slows down the optimizer, that every time you're searching for a query execution plan, it will test these indexes to see if will have a cost or not to use it. Is it better or not? So that slows down everything. And you should also check for duplicate indexes. So if you have indexes on the same columns, this will also need to be maintained, and for the optimizer, it will check them also anyway. So if you have duplicate indexes, you should get rid of them too. So try to find them and check which one you can delete. And finally, you may also miss some indexes. So if you do too many full table scans, it's maybe that your indexes are not good or are not used properly. So you can find all that information in MySQL through what we call the sys schema. So for example, for the unused index, this is the query. Slides will be shared. Don't need to copy it. But you can see which are the indexes that are not used. And for example, here you can see, since we started MySQL, these indexes were never been used. So maybe you should remove them. Same for the duplicate index. So we check redundant indexes. And it says, okay, this table has some index. And for example, country code is also redundant index compared to the primary key, right? So what should we do? Is you should remove the country code, for example. So it explains you all that. Missing indexes, we check which are the tables that are doing full table scans. So from schema, and you can see here, there is a table in the schema students that is doing full table scan. And for the object customer, we can see the latency. So when we know that, we check in the statement with full table scan where the database is students and when the query is looking for that students object, and we can find the query. So now we can see that when we are looking for the age, we are doing full table scan, so we need an index on the age maybe, right? So this was tip number 6. This tip will be number 6. This one I like it. It's always blame the network. So if you are a DBA, when, for example, you want to alter a big table, you need, for example, to remove an index. You need, even if more and more in MySQL 8, we have adding what we call instant DDL. So you do a change, it's a metadata change, and nothing happens. But someone needs still to take a lot of time. And this is the case when we drop an index, for example. So here, let's say I think this index, I was looking what Fred said, and I saw that this strange index was not used. So I will delete it. On the weekend, I take some time and I delete that index, and it takes a lot of time. Then on Monday morning, this is the developer coming and say, hey, DBA team, my monthly report is taking ages. It's your fault. What's going on? And then you say, oops, we have removed it, and sorry, we're going to fix it, but it will take a lot of time. I need to do it by night because it can slow down everything. So I'm very sorry, but you need to kill your report now and run it later. So the best alternative is the one you blame somebody else. And over the weekend, instead of removing that index, you will put it as invisible. So optimizer won't see it anymore, but you keep maintaining it if there is an issue. And then in the morning, again, hey, DBA team, my monthly report is broken. What's going on? Then what you do, I know what it is. You do, you put it back as visible, and then you say, oh, it was a network issue. It should be fixed now. And that's it. Very easy. So work with the invisible index, and after you see that for 1 or 2 months nobody complained, you can remove it. But don't remove indexes in production like that, be sure. Tip number 7, when you do these changes in DDL, thank you, you can, there is a way to improve that. And not a lot of people knows that, but we have InnoDB DDL threads that can be tuned to make it faster. So, for example, here, I want to alter this table and I want to add an index. And you can see this took 9 minutes to add this index. And these are the default in MySQL 8 of these variables. Now, I want to change that and tune it. And of course, the size match also the amount of threads is because they are all shared together. And I can check on my system how many CPU core I have. So from the SQL, I can see I have 16 cores. I have plenty of RAM, so I will put 1 giga RAM for this cache. So I change that information. And then I run the query. And you can see, same query takes 3 minutes now, instead of the 9 minutes, just by some fine tuning. And of course, you need to test and check. And for example, when I put 2 gigabytes of buffer and only 4 threads, I can reduce it to 2 minutes 43. Compared to the 9 minutes, this is a very large performance tuning when you need to modify your data in MySQL. You can also cap the query time. So if your query are too long, you can add this small int to say the maximum execution time should be 5 seconds, for example. So every time you do a select, if it takes more, it will stop. And that's it. Find the ugly duckling. So if you need to improve 1 query only per month, this is the query you need to run to find the information about which one it should be. So this is the query. You can find it on my blog. You will find it on the slide. And it gives you the query that consumed the most time. So here, the latency, we call it. So this one has 4 hours 29 for being executed only 5 times, so more than 51 minutes per query. So this is the query you should fix. So the problem, it's the query, right? It's not the database. Good InnoDB settings. If you don't know how to tune InnoDB, InnoDB dedicate server 1, and the magic will happen. MySQL will do it all for you. So you have information about that. Start warm. So InnoDB, it's a database that has caches, and the buffer pool, it's where all the secret is. So you can do to dump the content of the pages, but not all the pages, the addresses of the pages in memory. When you stop and when you restart, it will load it. And if you want, you can say every hour, I want to dump that data. So next time I will load the most accurate data that at least at max as 1 hour timer. So it's not too much. Disable the adaptive hash index. So this is enabled by default still now. Maybe it will change, but nobody benefits for it until you just only do some selects and all your working set it's in the database. Otherwise, if you have secondary index and stuff like that, it slows down. So adaptive hash index, you should get rid of it. The full working set should also be in memory, so meaning that all the data you work most of the time with should be in memory to make it fast. Memory is always faster than disk, even if now disks are faster and faster. So you can see here and compare, make a ratio to see how many of data it's read from the database memory, the buffer pool, or read from the disk's pages. If the ratio is 10%, you have a performance issue and you should try to reduce the working set. How to reduce it? Remove unused index or increase the buffer pool and stuff like that. So yeah, this is how you can get that information. And this query shows you how many data and which tables are in the InnoDB cluster, InnoDB buffer pool. 14, so almost one after this one, is choose the right memory allocator. This is not really for developers, this is more for the DBAs, but the default memory allocator is a glibc malloc on Linux, and you can change that by gmalloc or tcmalloc. Tcmalloc is the one you should use, because it's the one giving you the best performance. So this is how you change it. You restart, and you can see with tcmalloc, the memory management is much better for MySQL. So this is how it works. And finally, the last tip, it's always blame the DNS. It's always a funky DNS problem. I'm not the only one saying. Everybody complains about DNS on Twitter or X. So if you don't want to make the reverse resolving of your or the client connecting because you have network or very latency on your DNS, you can remove that. You say, oh, persist only, skip name resolve. So when a client connect, you don't try to resolve this IP as a name, but you need to grant using the IPs. And if you do that, it will be much faster to connect to the database. So sometimes this is a very big problem when DNS is not reliable on the system, and it happens more than what we think. So thank you. Share your love to MySQL on the social media. There is a community Slack where I'm always there, and plenty of other people and engineers are there. If you have questions, I have no time, but see you at the booth number 6. 15 minutes, I'm done. Thank you.